are waving.
We just do as we're told.
Now stand, now hop.
So because there are so many of you here today, we want to make sure there's a lot of opportunity for you to ask questions. So that stand right there is for all of you. If you want to ask a question, all you got to do is line up. So does anyone want to start us off and line up? Has anyone got any questions for our authors?
It's totally safe. We won't spit on you.
Maybe we could start off with the authors just telling us a bit about their current projects and their upcoming projects. We do have a microphone there, but you'll need to turn it on.
I've got it.
Such a gentleman. All right, so, well, you know that Jay and I have Gemina coming. That is, we described Illuminae as Battlestar Galactica meets 10 Things I Hate About You, and we described Gemina as like Die Hard meets Alien. So we're very excited about that. But Jay also has another new release out.
I do. So I don't know if you guys follow us on Twitter, but we revealed yesterday that we have a kind of very special guest star in Gemina. So for those of you who don't know, the main character in Gemina is a girl called Hannah, and she's an artist. She keeps a visual diary throughout the siege of Heimdall, which is the events of book 2. She kind of thinks by drawing on the page. And Marie Lu, who is a very good friend of ours and a New York Times bestselling author, and also an amazing visual artist, is going to be doing all the illustrations in Gemina. So we got to tell that yesterday. But you all know because you already all cheered. So I don't know why I'm telling you again. Yeah, you can cheer again. Amy and I also have sold in a new series which is going to be beginning in 2018 after Illuminae is finished. At the moment that's called, that's what these, thank you for people who got tattoos on their arms and have no idea what tattoo is for. Alright, so yeah.
You've joined a cult now, that's the thing.
It's called, at the moment it's called the Andromeda Cycle, that might change. But we've basically pitched it as the Breakfast Club goes to Starfleet Academy. So you guys it's kind of weird. Are you guys old enough to remember the Breakfast Club? I don't think you are. I think you've just seen it later. But anyway, yeah, so it's basically about a group of ragtag misfits and discipline cases and losers who have to save the universe, basically. Amy, you should have talked about your MG series as well. Okay, forget it.
All right. I like a crowd that knows what they want. You guys better know what you want when it comes to question time, though, because if no one queues up here, we can do this all night. So I also have, I have 2 more things coming. I have a series called Unearthed that I'm writing with Meg Spooner, who I wrote These Broken Stars with. We kind of like to pitch it as, it's like Indiana Jones teams up with Lara Croft in space. And I also have a series for younger readers coming. It's a fantasy series. And it has dragons and wolves and shape-shifting and twins and betrayal and magic and inventions, and I love it.
What's it called?
Well, I don't know if I'm... Actually, we did just title it like the day before yesterday, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say yet. Are you guys... Okay, for real...
What if we guess it?
Yeah. We'll get a game of Hangman going, it'll be great. No, so it's called Ice Wolves, and Elementals is the series name. And please try not to tweet that because I probably wasn't meant to say it.
And I have, in addition to the sequel for Nevernight, which I brought out a month ago, I also have a new YA series starting in 2018, which is called Lifelike. And that is basically Romeo and Juliet meets Mad Max with a little bit of Blade Runner thrown in. And yeah, there are samples of Unearthed and Lifelike, like 1 or 2 pages right at the back of your samplers, so you can check it out. And yeah, so we're kind of busy.
Sounds cool. Is this a chain gun I see before me on top of a truck? I have Golden Hand out very soon. It's a return to the Old Kingdom. I'm immensely pleased it's here tonight because I wasn't sure that it would be. Not officially out in Australia until the end of September, about a week ahead of America and the United Kingdom. Golden Hand is the 5th book in the Old Kingdom. It's a continuation that picks up almost immediately from the end of Abhorsen. It's 6 months after the end of Abhorsen. It carries on the story of Lirael and Nicholas Sayer. It introduces a new character called Ferren, who comes from the far north, who's trying to get a message to Lirael from someone very important from her past. And once again, it's an adventure story. It takes us back into the Old Kingdom, back into the struggle with free magic and those who should stay dead but don't. It's back in that world again, which has been great. I've loved going back to it myself, and I hope everybody will enjoy going back there as well. So Golden Hand, the book is actually here. Amazing cover by Sebastian Ciaflione, and I hope you enjoy it. Speaking of the Old Kingdom and the Abhorsens and their bells, I do have some things to give away myself later in a much more sophisticated way than these guys. No, I have. No, when I'm signing, I will have a lucky dip in my top hat, currently folded up. And I've got various things to give away, some bell charms, some stickers of charter marks, and some arcs of Frog Kisser, which comes out at the end of February. This is actually the American cover, but the American will probably be the same. Jess briefly mentioned it. It's a very nice comparison to The Princess Bride. I hope people still think that once it's been widely read. My American editor, David Levithan, made that comparison, who of course is also very well known as a YA author. Just mentioned it briefly. It's a story about a princess on a quest to actually find the ingredients for a lip balm she needs to kiss actually her sister's prince. It's not her own prince, to return him from his frog form. But it gets a lot more complicated than that, because there's also there's a newt who was a boy who needs to be transformed back. There is an otter who's been made into a half-human. There's lots and lots of people who need to be transformed back one way or the other. And she's also accompanied by her faithful dog, Ardent. So Frog Kisser, it's a fairy story, it's an adventure, it mucks around with lots of things to do with fairy stories. I think it's funny. I hope that you'll think so too. One of the very great pieces of marketing Scholastic have done for it, and hopefully Alan Unwin will do the same, is Frog Kisser Lip Balm. And I've got four of those to give away as well. So in the lucky dip there'll be a few things. This one in the book, the lip balm is pawpaw flavoured, which disturbs the dog initially, but who doesn't know it's a fruit. This Frog Kisser lip balm is in fact strawberry flavoured, but apparently works pretty well. So Frog Kisser in February, and then in later in the year I have another book co-written with Sean Williams, which is the start of a series called Have Sword Will Travel, which is another middle grade adventure story about some kids who find a magic sword in the bottom of a river, and they don't really want to find a magic sword, but that's a ways off. So Golden Hand, basically now for you guys, Frog Kisser end of February, and hopefully more to come after that. And I'll hand you over to Deb and Margo.
So, want some lip balm? My name's Deborah, and we have coming out with Scott Zero's Book 2, Swarm, later this month, and we are currently working on Zero's Book 3, which is coming out this time next year. And apart from that, I'm just kicking off a couple of my own projects, one solo project, one collaboration. I have a very important question I need to ask you guys on behalf of my collaborator and myself, who shall remain nameless because he's not here this evening. Are you sick of vampires yet? No. Woo! Good answer. That's all I needed from you guys. I know. We spotted, a gap in the market. Not enough vampire stories. We were like, we're there. We're the guys. So that's me, Margo.
Yeah, well, Swarm has taken the zeros and kind of amped them up, hasn't it? And it's also, of course, revealed. How much do I need to keep under my hat, do you think? God. That's true, yeah. Well, we did get asked when we were talking about the first zeros book whether these were the only 6 zeros in the world. And of course, any intelligent reader would have gathered that word, more zeros were going to be discovered and their powers were going to increase and multiply in exciting and explosive ways, which they do in Volume 2. So there are a couple of really big crowd scenes with really awful things happening in them, and each of the zeros learns something new about their power and something new about themselves, and quite a few of them find something new about each other as well. So I can promise you more thrills and spills and romance in this second volume. As for solo projects, you saw on the screen that I've got this collection of greatest hits of short stories that are coming out in May next year. I also have a children's picture book called Tintinabula coming out from Little Hare in October next year, I hope. The pictures are being drawn as we speak.
Singing My Sister Down was a World Fantasy Award winner too, amongst many other things.
That's true,
So
yes.
it should be mentioned. It's probably one of the best. I don't need a microphone. I think it's worth pointing out. All of Margo's stories are very well loved, but Singing My Sister Down is a World Fantasy Award winner. Very few Australians have won that award. Margo's actually won most of the ones that Australians have won. And it's won many, many other awards as well. It's a fabulous story, and there are many, many other fabulous stories in that book as well. But I think it's also a very significant story on the world stage, so it should get a special mention.
We've got plenty of time for questions, so does anyone have a question they want to jump up?
I'll be brave. I'll start.
Thank you for being the first.
Hi guys, love your work, just everything. All right, my question is, especially for the authors who collaborate, how do you cope with writer's block, especially when you've got deadlines? I know it's your profession, but do you have any funny ways that you guys cope with writer's block?
I found that writer's block is really not a problem in a collaborative enterprise.
Yep.
I'm having a really hard time getting back to writing solo things, I have to say, because collaboration has really spoiled me. Like, who else is going to write the other 2/3 of things that I'm working on now? But I think it depends on what the source of the writer's block is. It depends whether it's an actual sticking point in that story that needs to be worked out, or whether it's just the fact that you've pretty much got a bit stale with everything you're writing and you just need to walk away from the writing for a while. There are a lot of people who will say, you're not a writer unless you write every day religiously, and I don't subscribe to that. I think there are times when it's better to just walk away and fill the well some other way.
Cool, excellent, awesome. So none of you run around naked if you've got writer's block or anything like that?
Oh, there's that as well.
Excellent, wonderful, thank you. Wonderful.
Before the next question, I just want to jump in. We've had a question come through on Twitter. How much of Marie Lou's illustrations are going to be in Gemini?
There are about 20. Sorry. I don't have. There's about 20 all told, I think. And some are more detailed than others. Some are character portraits. Some are really quick sketches, because she's in the middle of a pretty crisis type situation, so she can't spend 4 hours drawing doodles in her diary. Not. You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
I'll take the microphone. No, and there's lots of really amazing, different types of drawings. There's comic strips in there, and occasionally she wants to explain something that's happened, she does it in comic strip form. There's portraits, there's a lot of diagrams as well. So, she talks about how time has been spent. She does a pie chart and draws a picture for each part of that. So
she's a visual thinker, so
yeah.
When she's thinking through a problem or an emotion, she'll put it down on a page.
Yeah, so we gave Marie an idea of what we wanted those illustrations to to kind of convey, and then gave her a lot of room to move in terms of how she did it, because she's so talented, we didn't want to fence her in.
Hi guys, the lip gloss.
Everyone is bending down.
Thank you. So the talk about the lip gloss got me wondering about possible tie-in products for both Swarm and Gemini. So if you could choose a product that would go along with your book, expense be damned, what would you choose?
I think really, yeah. I mean,
Fully functional wormhole, that would be great.
yeah.
Probably make some money with that.
Yeah, I think a large spaceship would be ideal. So we have our own spaceship designer already. We have schematics of these. Like, we have blueprints. So, you know, otherwise, I mean, thinking about Illuminate's like just lots of hand sanitizer, really.
Well, for Zeros 1, we had those coffee mugs, because the first line of Zeros is more coffee. Zeros 2, I'm going to vote for like a...
Really good tight pair of jeans.
Oh, yes it is. I was like, where is Margo getting this from? I was going to go for a trampled shopping centre. Like, full scale, like not a model, but an actual, like, give me a shopping centre that's being destroyed. For no reason.
Or an elaborate fountain.
That's stupid fountain.
Thank you. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, when you're writing, how you guys organise your research and try and keep track of everything.
Well, I guess I've got the microphone. I should start. Yeah. I think I'd know better after all this time. I actually don't do a lot of active research per se, but I am always finding things that will perhaps prove useful at some point later. Some of them I write down in notebooks, and some I just kind of remember. I'm not the most organised of writers in terms of keeping track of things and collecting information that I might later use and cross-indexing it and so on, which some people do, and I'll be curious to know if anybody here actually does do something, and my way just sounds incredibly amateur now that I think about it, but it does seem to work. What about who wants to, who's organised? Who's an organised?
Yeah. I actually put everything into Scrivener files. Do you know Scrivener? Because you can import stuff and you can just copy and paste stuff, and like I have incredibly extensive Scrivener files with like names of cities where stuff will happen, and most popular kids' names in the year 2000, files like that. So it all goes into Scrivener for me.
You are organised.
I used to be a project manager, so very, very organised. I do have spreadsheets. Yeah, who doesn't? So normal. Yeah, go girl.
We have spreadsheets, but it's mostly tracking death tolls. You laugh, but it's actually true. Like, I am probably the worst person in the world at maths, and Amy is the second worst, so she gets to be math person. I'm the eliminator. Sorry? We would have to look at the spreadsheets.
That's why I have the spreadsheet.
No, I think we're kind of like Garth. We mostly remember the interesting facts and tidbits. We did a lot of research. We watched a lot of Commander Chris Hadfield videos. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Commander Chris, but if you haven't, you should go home and YouTube him tonight. He was a Canadian astronaut who stayed up on the International Space Station for about 9 months, and he would do videos of the most mundane things in your life and show how incredibly difficult they become in zero gravity. Like brushing your teeth, for example, becomes a monumental task when the water you spit out goes all over the spaceship and shorts out all the computers and whatever. We watched a lot of SciShow Space, Hank Green, and we would just store away those interesting facts and try and find cool ways to work them into the story.
Is that actually any helpful answers and any of that?
No, we weren't helpful at all.
Everyone's different. You find your own way to do these things, which is good.
And if you don't have a system, don't worry, because we don't.
We also have we have an astrophysicist friend who fact-checks all our science for us. Because even though we're 500 years in the future and there's warp drives and inertial dampeners, which is artificial gravity on spaceships, which is impossible, and our astrophysicist yells at us about this, we wanted to make sure the physics was all legitimate. So a lot of the ideas that we all get about science fiction and the way space works comes from Hollywood and television, and Hollywood and TV kind of throw facts out the window when it comes to making movies, because space is not quite as dramatic as we think. So airlocks, for example, like if you were standing in an airlock on a spaceship and someone opened up the airlock, you all think that you would get sucked out into space. Actually, you just kind of grab your chest and fall over dead. Like nothing dramatic happens, you just kind of die. But it looks much more dramatic to get sucked out into the outer space, so that's what happens on TV.
Yeah, I think organised would be a generous term for me. I'm with Garth, I just kind of watch stuff and remember it and Google on the spot. And a lot sticks up here. Like I've got a lot rattling around that I really want to use that I haven't found the chance yet.
The Google search terms we use, like if we're not all being observed by our government, like right now I would be really disappointed.
Yeah, it's true. Like our government system has massive holes in it if we're not being watched. Because we spend a lot of time Googling like how to blow things up, and when someone dies, when do they go stiff, and then when do they go floppy again, and then when does the second like round of rigor mortis come, and you know, there's a lot of bad stuff in our search histories. Yeah, Mary Roach? Yeah, Mary Roach is where I do all my research. I just read her book called Packing for Mars. I will tell you my favourite space fact that I learned from Packing for Mars. There was an incident with some cosmonauts where they were sent up into space, and one of the things they were meant to do was an experiment with onions, because you know, like onions sprout, as anyone who is bad at housekeeping like me knows, sprout quite quickly. And so they were sent up, and there was something of a miscommunication, and the onions were in fact eaten on day one. And then when someone radioed up a couple of days later and went, hey, how are the onions doing? One of the cosmonauts panicked and said, great. And this went on for weeks as the cosmonauts lied about the progress of the onions. And the problem was no one on the space station really knew how fast onions were meant to grow. And so they were giving these answers, and down on Earth everyone's like, it's an agricultural revolution. We're gonna feed the world from space, this is incredible. And eventually the cosmonauts had to be like, look, don't be mad. Promise you won't be mad if we tell you something. Onions on day one. And wait, I will get to use that one day, you wait.
I'm going to jump in with a social media question that's come in. If you could collaborate with any author, alive or dead, who would it be?
This is super embarrassing because I get asked this all the time and I always say Garth. And I'm too flustered now to think of a different answer.
Douglas Adams.
Well, Amy, of course. It only just came to me, as a matter of fact.
Oh, Oscar Wilde. Yay.
Oh my god, I don't know who! These are too many! I would be quite, I don't know, I think M.T. Anderson is pretty cool. The guy who wrote Feed. I'd collaborate with him in a minute.
Alright, can we go to the next question?
Hi guys. I should just jam it up with you. That's what I was thinking.
That's my fault, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you guys for coming. My question is for you, Mr. Kristoff. I just finished Nevernight. If any of you guys haven't read it, you need to right now. Chapter 1 is honestly
6 out of 10.
5.5, pushing it.
3.5 stars.
Chapter 1 is honestly like a work of art. It is so beautiful and lyrical, and it's just 2 scenes written parallel, sort of mirroring each other. And I was just wondering the inspiration for that. Like, did you know you were going to have 2 scenes flipping back and forth, or did you kind of think of a really cool double line and was like, oh, I should do that? Like, I was wondering how you came about that chapter, basically. It's great.
Thank you. I'm really glad.
It was my idea.
I'm really glad you liked it. I don't have a great answer for that question. For those of you who don't know, the first chapter of Nevernight is called Firsts, and it's the main character losing her virginity in parallel to killing her first victim, or not victim, assassinating her first, seeking retribution against the people who wronged her. She's not just going around killing people for fun. That's it, yeah. No, I wish I had a good answer. That's kind of a where do your ideas come from question, and I don't think any author in the history of authordom has answered that question adequately. Do you guys have a good answer for that question? Because I don't.
I get them from the Magic Realism bot on Twitter.
Yeah, that's right. I actually subscribe to the Ideas Shop, and every month they send you a box of ideas in them, and you kind of sort through it. That's pretty cool. Virgin murder, yeah.
It's a good question about how you choose the structure of the story. But like why? Because, and I think,
you know, the reason it is actually hard to answer, because often stories, for me at least, I muck around for some time, and then I find the structure in the course of writing it. And it's always kind of magical when you do work out, this is how I need to tell this story. I need these two viewpoint characters. I need to set these two things against each other. This is how the story works. But often, for me, I don't know going in that's what I'm going to do. I find that out in the process of writing it. And sometimes that also means you will do some writing which you don't ever use. So you'll write a chapter or a prologue or whatever, which you need to do in order to work out what it is you're actually going to do. So even though that doesn't end up in the book, it's a necessary part of the whole process. I mean, do you guys find that you find your way into the story, and it can take some time, and sometimes you do it all in your head over a year or 2 years, sort of working it out without ever putting a word on the screen. And sometimes you do it as you're writing.
That scene was one of the ideas that started the book, and it was actually, there was going to be an entire act of the book, like 100 odd pages leading to the moment, and I wrote those 100 pages and then threw them all away and started at that moment, because that was kind of the pivotal moment in her adolescence.
And was it that structure, like from the start? Did you
the duology thing, the sex death thing. That's basically what it is. I'm really glad you liked it. Thank you so much. It's really lovely of you to say.
So I'm going to jump in with the social media. We've got heaps of social media questions coming in. And this question applies to both Amy and Jay and Margo and Deb. Do you guys have annoying, bad author habits that annoy the other?
I hope so. See, I feel like Garth should be answering this because his co-author isn't here, so he can say anything.
Yeah, Sean.
Yeah.
So over here, am I talking about my habits or Jay's?
Either Jay's.
The audience is voting for Jay's.
I don't mind that.
I feel like this could unravel really quickly right here on stage.
We actually have never had a fight, really.
No, we've never had a fight, and we're waiting, because like when it comes, it will be both totally epic and over nothing at all.
Over like a comma.
And certainly his fault when it comes. No, so Jay does this thing when we're brainstorming where I'll say something and he doesn't respond in any way. You guys may have seen me tweet pictures of this sometimes. He'll just like, yeah, exactly that. And he will do that for like minutes at a time. And I've already said like, what if we do this? And so now he's silent and I'm like, did he not hear me? Or is he considering it? Or has he like moved on? And if he is considering it, I don't want to interrupt what could be the genesis of some incredible thought. But then sometimes it turns out he just didn't hear me. And I remember after our first tour, we came home and I said to his wife, there's this thing sometimes where he doesn't answer. And she nearly cried. She's like, at last someone understands. I've been so alone, Amy. Jay may not have known about that last bit.
No, I knew. But my wife is a very complicated lady. We actually we survived the zombie apocalypse test. And I failed the test because I said I would go back to save my wife. And my wife passed the test because she said she would leave me to die. So there was serious conversations in the Kristoff household that night. I'm also a bit of a flake. I have a habit of discarding any information that I consider superfluous to what I'm doing right now, which is pretty much everything that you tell me other than what concerns what is happening right now. So I don't read my emails, or if indeed I read them, I immediately forget them. And so Amie has to remember all this stuff. So I would say, like, speaking for me, that would annoy the hell out of me if I was Amie.
But I did you. You're meant to do me now.
She's...
I know it's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah. She's great. Everyone likes her. She's like...
That's annoying.
Yeah.
She gets grumpy when she doesn't have chocolate, I guess.
Angry. He's learned onto her now that if I start saying, I don't know, he's like, Anne, we're just stepping into this shop right now. We will have your finest chocolate immediately.
Because the thing is, she usually always knows. So if you've ever heard the word I know come out of her mouth, she's low on blood sugar. There is a weird thing where people mistake us for being married when we're on tour. We had a moment, pretty much exactly that. We had a moment at US Customs, and the security guard kind of turned to me and asked me a question about my wife, and it took a few seconds for us both to click, and then we looked at each other simultaneously, and both said, "Ugh!" and jumped physically. I'm not even kidding you. We physically jumped apart to demonstrate how obscene that idea was. Anyway.
This is where you complain about Margo and Scott.
Oh, right. Oh, Scott is clearly the most annoying of the three of us. He's not here, so I can tell you everything. And when you're tweeting this, he's Scott Westerfeld, S-C-O-T-T. No. No I. Don't tell him I'm saying this. The thing that annoys me most about Scott, actually, now that I really think about it, is deadlines mean nothing to this guy. Like, we've got a book due within 4 weeks. I don't know how it ends. Annoys the frickin' crap out of me.
You're right.
Look, I can't talk anymore, I'm so angry.
Where do we go? The deadline thing is getting to be a problem, isn't it? I don't know how. Yeah, maybe the whole series is just gonna try it off into the ether. Yeah.
Westerfeld with an F-E-L-D.
Yeah, F-E-L-D. Yeah.
Who's got a lighter?
We might move on to your question.
Let's move on. We've slandered him enough.
I'm not the one who wanted to set him on fire.
It's just an effigy, you know? No, that's it.
It's okay. Garth, my question is for you. I've been reading your book since I was 7. And
too.
What I want to know is how the hell do you have no wrinkles?
You're very kind. You're very kind. I was just going to say I'm old. That's why you've been reading my book since you were 7, because I am old. I have been writing...
I did check Wikipedia quickly to check you had been writing before I was 7.
I was probably writing before you were born.
According to Wikipedia.
Well, that's definitely wrong then, isn't it? It's in Wikipedia. Thank you. That's a kind thing to say.
I really want to know your skincare routine.
Books keep me young.
Consumes the souls of the innocent.
Sorry, I'm short. I like PJ.
It's my fault.
So I wanted to know if you guys could Freaky Friday, so like swap 2 of your characters per day, like any 2 characters from any of your books that you've written. Who would you choose? Who do you think would be like the funniest? To swap their bodies, by the way. Sorry, yeah. If you don't know what Freaky Friday is.
Yeah, mostly it wouldn't be very funny, I suspect. I think it would probably
Well, what
be...
would cause the most havoc and things like that?
Never ask authors how to cause havoc, because we've all just started going, this wouldn't be havoc, it'd just entertain me. I'd quite like to see Lilac from These Broken Stars hang out with Hannah, our new character from Gemini, because those ladies have like an eye for fashion, which I guess I write because I do not have an eye for fashion, but I envy people who have style. And I think that they would probably either like each other a lot or hate each other, and either way it'd be quite entertaining and there would be makeovers?
It's a really hard question. We've never been asked it before. And so what I'm going to do is talk for a little while, fill in time while these guys frantically think of something intelligent to say.
Just go, run.
I'm going to say Mr. Kindly, who's a character in Nevernight, have him hang out with Ella, who's a character from Gemini, which most of you guys haven't met yet. So that's a really poor choice because no one will get the references. But when you read the books, I think the snark level would reach critical. That'd be fun.
It's a very tough question. I always think of my books as existing very much in their own worlds, and so the idea of taking them from one of those universes into another, it just is like anathema to me. Like it couldn't happen. So I'm going to quickly pass the microphone.
Freaky Friday. Who would we swap in Zeros?
Scam with someone else.
Scam with almost anyone.
If we swap Scam and Chizara, because Scam is the least morally stable, and Chizara is forever working out whether things are right, whether they ought to do these things, and whether they ought to destroy this shopping centre or whatever. Scam with Flicker.
Or Scam with his mum.
That's all. Yeah, that'd work too. Yeah.
Freaky Friday, the hell out of it.
Yes.
It is actually Freaky Friday.
We'll let this be the last question. We do have just a couple on social media that I'll ask before we move along.
Is that okay?
That's okay.
Firstly, I was wondering, mostly in the science books, how do you keep your logic consistent in your world building? You have a physicist.
We have an astrophysicist.
Yeah.
She gave us 25 pages of notes on illuminating.
And I would say 5 pages were just anger.
Gravity doesn't work that way. Nuclear explosions in space don't work that way. Fire in space doesn't work that way. It was all caps all the time for about 5 pages.
Yeah, and we also have doctors, biologists, hackers, lawyers, all kinds of people, psychologists, who talk to us about what they do. And so that helps you make sure that what you're doing resembles real life. And the thing is, that's helpful because real life usually happens that way for a reason. And we also just have really smart people. We have editors and critique partners and beta readers who read through, and every so often there's, as when Meg and I were editing Unearthed just the last few weeks, we had one of those, oh, why didn't they just take the eagles to Mordor kind of moments? Like, we've got them doing all this stuff and they could have just gone there. Oh, okay. So sometimes you don't keep your logic straight and you have to backtrack and figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, rely on experts is really good advice. You can't be an expert in everything. Like, obviously, someone who has studied medicine for 8 years is going to know a lot more than you can ever know, unless you're a doctor yourself. So,
I might just add, it's mainly about the illusion of logic rather than actual logic. Because what you're doing is building an artificial reality of the story, which you do out of small details. It's like a mosaic. And obviously, a big, ugly chunk of tile that doesn't fit with all the others will break up the whole picture. But if you get all the little pieces right, the whole thing will add up. And if it works effectively, if the story is really engaging, you'll be carried along with it anyway, and you won't stop and think, hang on a second, this doesn't really work if you built it all up from the ground up, if all those small details are right. And of course, when they do rely on real things, you do have to make sure that they are correct. If you get all of that put together, people will go along with it. So it's more about an illusion rather than an actual reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that if you look terribly closely at the logic of Zeros, you will find a very fine lace with holes gradually widening through it. Now, but in the course of writing it, we sometimes find it really hard to keep the logic straight, and we also lose track because there are 6 different people with 6 very, very different powers. We lose track of the parameters of those powers often, so that sometimes we will write a whole chapter where we've forgotten some essential thing about a person's power. And there are plenty of times where we've written the character Flicker, who is blind, and involved her in actions that require her to actually look at a phone and do things like this. So yeah, we keep it straight as far as we can among ourselves, and then we rely on editors to point out the fact that something is just stupid.
That kind of leads to my next question. As collaborators, how do you decide who writes what? Do you write different characters or different sections of the book? Or?
Yeah, we've got 6 characters, so we each take 2, so that's fairly straightforward. Yeah. We're not allowed to tell you which 2 characters. We may reveal all at the end of the series. And then again, we may not.
3 of them really drunk and trying to get them to guess which ones they write.
The truth is we don't remember.
You told me, I couldn't remember either.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether we chose. I writes Ezra, Ames writes Katie, which is kind of the boy writes the boy and the girl writes the girl, but that's different from every other book that we've ever worked on. So I'm not sure that was instinctual or whether it just made sense for us at the time. I don't think there was a lot of logic in that decision. It just felt right, which is one of those weird arty answers.
Yeah, it's kind of the vibe, Your Honour.
Yeah.
Well, because especially in the Illuminae files, you know, there's dozens and dozens of characters who get their own voice in every book. And so it is sort of just a bit of like who feels like they can do that one, who's got an idea for how that person's going to work. Yeah, as Jay said, like in These Broken Stars, I wrote Tava, the dude, and in Storm Dancer, he wrote a female protagonist, so it's not like we usually write our own gender. Just kind of who feels like a match.
The lines also tend to blur as we get further into the book. I mean, you're writing from the person, one POV, but the other person's character is very often wandering into that POV, so you need to be able to step into that character's shoes and know how that character works. But when you're writing a book together, you get to know the other person, the other author's character really intimately by, you know, kind of the 2/3 mark, so it's quite easy to then jump in and run along. So, yeah, it's not a great answer, sorry.
No, it is. I just, because when I was reading Illuminae, I was like, do they just sit there and IM each other as the characters?
Yeah, we do. So we're both huge nerds. Amy got her start writing in an online RPG game set in the Anne McCaffrey universe, and I got my start playing D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. So we're both role-playing nerds. So yeah, when we're IMing each other, we'll open up a Google document and we'll just start typing in text. And we don't have a real plan as to how the conversation is going to go. All we will know is, you know, in this scene, Katie and Ezra have to have a fight. We don't know what it's going to be about. We don't know how it's going to be resolved, but they need to be mad at each other at this point in the narrative. And so we just start spitballing ideas and we go from there. So that's probably the most fluid part of the whole process. And we get to get our role-playing nerds on. We don't actually dress up or anything weird.
I know.
Just to be clear, it's not that kind of role-playing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've got a couple of quick social media questions. First one's just for Amy and Jay. Can you describe Gemini characters as ice cream flavours?
Glad you guys got that one.
Okay, Nick is rum and raisin because he is a reluctant member of the station's mafia, and I just feel like we have to chuck alcohol in there somehow because he's kind of a bad boy. And Hannah is mint choc chip. I don't like mint, but she feels like mint choc chip. Okay, do you guys have this weird thing? I tried this with audiences, it's usually 50-50, where like sometimes numbers or letters or days of the month days of the week or months of the year have feelings, like they feel like sharp or even or smooth, or like half of you are like yes and half of you are like you are mad, what is happening? No. You think I'm talking like a crazy person.
No,
These people are with me. Yeah, I know you're used to it. To me, like, I don't know, mint chocolate chip feels like very kind of fashionable and sleek and like cutting edge, and that's Hannah.
I have no idea what Ella would be.
Ella would be she would be like that obnoxious. Remember when you used to be able to get paddle pops that were like rainbow flavour, like really obnoxious, kind of bubblegum colours? That's what she would be.
Was there a nice like centre to it though?
No, it tasted delicious, but it was rainbow.
Some of them came with actual bubblegum.
Yeah.
Was there bubblegum in the middle?
On the top.
Okay.
I feel like we're overthinking this. What's the next question?
We might actually finish the Q&A there because we have a very, very quick game with audience members that we need to do. So what we're going to do is, the game is fake blurb for a fake book. We've created some fake book covers. You've got about 20 seconds to come up with a fake blurb. So if you want to nominate yourself to be a part of the game, you just put your hand up, because we need 5 people. So authors, I would like you to go and select someone each from the audience and bring them back up on stage with you. Of the people holding their hands up.
Do we have to go out into the crowd?
Oh, you don't have to if you don't want to.
You with the red hair, you shall be mine. Pink, sorry. The light's like right in my eye.
Alright. We might move the chairs out of the way. So if you guys want to stand up and move the chairs just behind the screen. The person that you've picked from the audience is now your opponent. Oh. Yeah.
She's gonna kill me.
Yeah. So
change opponents, please.
You can stand down there with them. The fake. So an author, whoever wants to go first. Who wants to go? Which author wants to go first?
I thought you were going to be my champion, sir. Sorry.
So, Jay, we're going to put the first book cover up, and you and your opponent both have 20 seconds to think of a blurb, and then you each say the blurb, and the audience votes for which one of they think is the best.
Okay, what do we win?
Well, you guys win. We have prize packs over there, and authors have their prize packs as well. So you essentially win even if you lose.
I should go down in the 5th.
Yes.
Take a dive. All right.
All right, so birds of a feather. I'm going to give you 20 seconds to have a think of a blurb. Have you guys got a blurb yet? All right, would you like to go first?
Totally
Our lovely reader. Can we give a round of applause?
Okay, so Birds of Feather is the story of a girl named Avery who moves to this little rural town and meets this guy who runs a bird sanctuary. And it's this super cute rom-com about this girl who's got a bird-like name and who doesn't actually like birds, but who falls for this guy who's just, his whole life is birds. And just they have to find a way to they have to find a way to compensate for that.
And Jay, you're up now.
Jesus. Thanks for going first. I still can't think of anything. All right. I'm going to say George, Gerald, and Jeremy must track down their long-lost brother, James, in pursuit of Polly, the infamous pigeon killer. It's a murder mystery set in the cutthroat world of Sure. Set in the cutthroat world of pigeon politics.
Can we give a round of applause for Jay's blurb? Jay, this is our thank you to you for not only your fantastic blurb, but for participating. So can everyone give Jay a round of applause? Rita, you've been able to pick a prize pack as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, what Jess doesn't know is that I get all Jay's chocolate under our agreement, so this is a good day for me. I don't need to win anymore.
All right, who's next? Which author would like to go next?
I think we're up next.
All right.
Okay, what is this?
Are
you going first?
What is that?
It's that's called you to survive. They will have to fall.
All right, 20 seconds now.
Are you going first? I'll go first.
The Abyss by Amelia Pond. In order to survive, they will have to fall. That's all we had. It is the year 2020, where Romeo and Juliet meet again after a long-lost decade or more. They gaze upon each other, which looks like the abyss, and they have to fall again. But this time it's not poison and knives, it's guns and anything you can think of by ISIS. I could get away with that. I do research too.
Okay, so The Abyss by Amelia Pond. It's actually a romantic comedy about two people who work together at a catering company. They are under contract to produce the largest dessert that Australia has ever seen. And this depicts a love scene that happens when they are attempting to assemble the giant Jello tower. As you can see, they're having some structural integrity problems. But it has a happy ending.
I will read that.
I don't even think we can pick winners here. I think everyone's just doing such a fantastic job. Can everyone give Amy a huge round of applause for being part of that? And also for Annie. Annie can pick a prize back down at the bottom of the stairs. Well done.
Thank you.
Which author would like to go next? Facing me. Garth, are you next?
I'm joined by Sophie over here. Do you want to go first,
A round of
Sophie?
applause. Do you want some time to think about it first? Yep. All right, let's go 20 seconds on the clock. All right, have you got a blurb?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So Penny and Nugget are two. They're two dogs who have grown up together, and they've done everything together, from having parties to going to Hawaii and dancing. But one day Penny goes missing, and Nugget goes on a journey to try and find Nugget.
In a world gone crazy, two dogs can make a difference. But first, they must survive the most awful trial of all, the children's birthday party. Only if they can survive the funny hats and not eating the food will they be able to save the world. I think the world might be doomed.
This is for you. Sophie, you can pick a prize pack at the bottom of the stairs. And we can give Garth a round of applause for being part of our
Oh, so awesome. Because I really love romance. It's really great. And this is Jolie, and I am Deborah.
We give a round of applause for our applause. All right, let's give 20 seconds on the clock.
We need music. Thinking music.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Okay,
Go Joel.
So this girl's name, her name is Mallory, but she's really pissed because whenever people see her, they keep singing that song, Valerie. She is a murderer, and she, like, a serial killer. She likes to kill people and then paint their faces on the walls. So, like, and then this guy up here, he joins her little spray painting gang so he can sort of suss her out and, you know, see who's the killer and why these dead people have faces painted on the walls. And it's also a romantic comedy, so they end up falling in love. There's a little bit of slapstick, falling over, and yeah.
Well done, Jolie. Message from the heart, more than just street art. But is it really? Because let's look at young Jolie here with her headphones on. Has everyone been following that headphones crap on Twitter? Yeah. Jolie does not want to hear from cheeky butt guy, who's currently painting the side of a train like an idiot. So in actual fact, this story is about Jolie picking up the pieces of cheeky butt guy when the train suddenly takes off. Thank you. And thank you, Jolie, for the inspiration.
Thank you.
Can everyone give Deb a round of applause for being part of our night? I believe we'll be passing. We've got an extra one. I'm going to pass this to you. Utopia by Alice Arjun. I'll give you some time on the clock with no music, unfortunately. Who wants to go first?
Darlena?
Alright, so in a world where cats have become human because evolution, why not? Cats are amazing. I haven't even come up with a thought yet. Because they're cat people, they love to break things, they like to burn things, they want to see the world end. It's just in their nature to do so. So you know, be anxious, okay, and then we have this girl, Anna. She wants to be more human. She doesn't like to be a cat. So she finds a way through this hectic world, goes into buildings, breaks some things, and then she finds humanity by burning fires. And then that's when she finds her true love. He's a fire starter. They become best friends, but then they fall in love. But then things happen. Romeo and Juliet meets like Firefly kind of. Just but more fire, more death.
Okay, you look at this cover and you think fantasy. This is not a fantasy. This is a gritty, realist. This is about a girl who wants to join the Cirque du Soleil. This is a girl who sits alone in a room brooding and fantasizing about an ambition which she cannot possibly fulfill, and winds up becoming an accountant. The end.
Can we thank our lovely volunteers for being part of the day? And Margo, can we thank Margo as well for being part of our YA Fan Fest? That concludes our evening. So the authors are sticking around to sign books, to chat, to mingle. There were a few people that were waiting in line for the bookish manicurist before we started, so if those people are kind of the first in line. Spray painting, there are some Instagram kind of speech bubbles for social media. Authors are going to stick around, so come and say hello. Thank you for coming.